Look at Japan. It's the land of Hello Kitty, Mario, Pokemon, and whatever the heck this is. It's the global capital of cute, but rewind the clock a few hundred years, and Japan was basically the battle royale server of the real world. We're talking about a society obsessed with honor, swords, and glorious death. So, the big question is, how? How did a nation of fierce head-chopping warriors turn into the world's biggest exporter of waifus? To understand the anime, you have to understand the bomb. And to understand the bomb, you have to understand the blade. Put on your helmets, kids. We're going to Japan. First things first. Japan is an island. Actually, it's a bunch of islands. Mostly mountains and volcanoes that hate you. Being an island is great for defense. The Mongols tried to invade twice. Both times, a typhoon showed up and wrecked their fleet. The Japanese called it Kamikaze or divine wind. Spoiler alert, they're going to use that word again later. It, won't be as fun the second time. Japan had an emperor. He was technically a living god. Descendant of the sun goddess. Sounds powerful, right? Wrong. For most of history, the emperor was just a fancy hood ornament. The real power belonged to the shogun. The shogun was the military dictator. He ran the show, and beneath him were the daimyo, feudal lords, and serving them were the samurai. If you were a peasant, your job was to grow rice and try not to get decapitated. If you were a samurai, your job was to decapitate people who looked at your daimyo funny. It was a simple time. But around the 1400s, the shogunate kinda fell apart. Everyone stopped listening to the boss. This started the Sengoku Jidai, the Warring States period. Imagine a 150-year-long bar fight. Every feudal lord wanted to be the new shogun. Betrayal was the national sport. Ninjas were actually useful. It was total chaos. Out of this bloodbath, 3 legends emerged. The 3 Unifiers. Think of them as the Destiny's Child of Japanese history, but with more murder. First, Oda Nobunaga, the Demon King. He liked guns, hated monks, and burned down anything that annoyed him. If the bird doesn't sing, kill it. He conquered half of Japan but then got betrayed by his own general and forced to commit seppuku in a burning temple. Classic Monday. Next up, Toyotomi Hideyoshi. He started as a sandal bearer for Nobunaga, literally the guy holding the shoes, and rose to become the ruler of Japan. If the bird doesn't sing, I'll make it sing. Narrator, he finished conquering Japan. He also invaded Korea. Twice. It didn't go well, then he died. Finally, Tokugawa Ieyasu. The patient one. If the bird doesn't sing, I'll wait for it to sing. He waited until everyone else was dead or tired, then won the massive Battle of Sekigahara in 1600. Boom. He became the shogun. Game over. Japan is unified. The Tokugawa family moved the capital to a tiny fishing village called Edo. You might know it today as Tokyo. And then, they did something crazy. They looked at the rest of the world, especially those Europeans spreading Christianity and selling guns, and said, yeah, no thanks. They initiated Sakoku. Closed country. Foreigners? Banned. Japanese leaving? Banned. Building big ships? Banned. If you tried to leave and came back? Execution. The only people allowed in were the Dutch, and even they were locked on a tiny man-made island in Nagasaki called Dejima. Japan basically ghosted the entire world for 250 years. But here's the thing, it worked. While Europe was busy with revolutions and wars, Japan had peace. The economy boomed. Art flourished. Sushi was invented. Narrator, but there was a problem. Samurai are warriors. What do warriors do when there are no wars? They became bureaucrats, administrators, poets. They were still at the top of the social ladder, allowed to carry 2 swords and cut down peasants who disrespected them. But they were broke. The merchants were making all the money, but they had 0 status. The samurai had all the status, but 0 money. It was an awkward vibe. By the mid-1800s, Japan was lagging behind. While they were perfecting the tea ceremony, the West was perfecting the steam engine. And Gatling guns. Narrator, the shogun thought they could keep the door locked forever. Enter Commodore Matthew Perry of the United States Navy. Not the guy from Friends. He rolled into Tokyo Bay with massive black ships armed with cannons. He didn't ask Japan to open up. He told them, open the country. Stop having it be closed. Narrator, as Japan, or what? Or I'll blow you up. Narrator, as Japan? Okay, fine. Ideally, this would be a smooth transition, right? Wrong. The samurai were furious. The shogun looked weak. The emperor started peeking out of his closet. Narrator, Japan was about to go through the fastest, most violent glow-up in human history. They were going to trade their kimonos for suits and their swords for rifles. Narrator, but to build the new Japan, the old one had to die. Next up, The Last Samurai, the birth of an empire, and how Japan decided that if you can't beat them, you should become an imperialist superpower and try to conquer Asia. It's gonna get dark. So, America kicked the door open. Japan had a collective panic attack. They realized two things immediately. The shogun is powerless against these giant black ships. Narrator, 2. If they don't get strong fast, they're going to end up like China, carved up like a Thanksgiving turkey by European powers. The shogun tried to play nice with the foreigners. But the samurai in the south, specifically the boys from Satsuma and Choshu, were not having it. Their slogan was simple and catchy, Sono Joy, which translates to, revere the emperor, expel the barbarians. Ironically, to expel the barbarians, they bought a bunch of guns from the barbarians. Civil War time. The Boshin War. It was the shogun versus the emperor's fan club. Narrator, spoiler, the shogun lost. Badly. In 1868, the shogunate was abolished. The emperor was restored to power. He was 15 years old. His name was Meiji. They renamed Edo to Tokyo, eastern capital, and they started the Meiji Restoration. This wasn't just a reform. It was a speed run of human civilization. Japan looked at the West and said, "I'll take your entire stock." British Navy? Copied. German Army? Copied. American education? Copied. French law? Copied. Top hats and monocles? Aggressively copied. The emperor even started eating beef to show everyone it was cool. Before that, eating four-legged animals was kinda taboo. Suddenly, barbecue was a patriotic duty. But progress has a price. And the samurai were the ones paying the bill. The government stripped them of their privileges. No more carrying swords in public. No more government stipends, salary. No more right to kill peasants for fun. They were basically fired. Now, you might have seen a movie called The Last Samurai. It's a great movie. It's also mostly nonsense. The real rebellion was led by Saigo Takamori. He helped restore the emperor, but then got mad that the new government was too Western. In 1877, he led the Satsuma Rebellion. It wasn't just swords versus machine guns. The samurai had guns too. They just ran out of ammo. It was the final stand of the feudal era. The samurai lost. Saigo died, probably assisted suicide. The age of the warrior class was over now. Every male in Japan was a warrior. It was called conscription. By the 1890s, Japan was modernized. They had trains, telegraphs, and a scary military. But they noticed something. All the cool kids, Western powers, had one thing in common: colonies. Hey, if I want a seat at the big kids' table, I need to go conquer someone. Round 1. The First Sino-to-Japanese War, 1894. The world thought China would crush Japan. China had been the boss of Asia for like 2,000 years. Japan wrecked them. The world was shocked. Japan took Taiwan and got rights in Korea. Round 2. The Russo-to-Japanese War, 1904. This was the main event. Russia was a European giant. No Asian country had ever defeated a European power in a modern war. The Tsar of Russia was like, LOL, look at these little island people. Japan absolutely annihilated the Russian Navy. It was humiliating for Russia. It actually helped cause the Russian Revolution later, but that's another video. The world went wild. The West finally treated Japan as an equal, sort of. But this victory did something dangerous to Japan's psychology. It gave them a massive ego boost. They started believing they were invincible, divine, chosen to lead Asia. The military started taking over the government. Democracy? Weak. Liberalism? Boring. We need more resources. We need oil. We need rubber. And we're going to take it. The heroic samurai spirit, Bushido, was twisted into absolute loyalty to the emperor and the state. Dying for the emperor wasn't just a duty, it was the ultimate goal. Japan annexed Korea in 1910. Then they looked at Manchuria. Then they looked at the rest of China. The stage was set. Japan was a loaded gun, pointed at the Pacific. And on the other side of that ocean, America was busy enjoying the roaring 20s, completely. unaware that the country they forced open was about to come back and knock on their door with explosives. Next time, the path to Pearl Harbor, the horrors of World War II, and the two suns that dropped from the sky. Narrator: it's about to get really heavy. Viewer discretion is advised. By the 1930s, Japan's military was fully off the leash. The civilian government? They were either assassinated or too scared to speak. In 1931, Japan invaded Manchuria, northern China. The League of Nations, the grandfather of the UN, said, "Hey, stop that." Japan quit the League and said, "Make me." The League did nothing. In 1937, full-scale invasion of China began. This wasn't a gentleman's war. It was brutal. Massacres, war crimes, the rape of Nanking. It was horrific. The image of the honorary samurai was dead. Japan had become a terrifying war machine. But Japan had a problem. War machines drink oil. Like, a lot of oil. And Japan has zero oil. Narrator: guess who sold them 80% of their oil? The United States. The US didn't like what Japan was doing in China. So, President FDR said, "No more oil for you." Panic mode. Without US oil, Japan's navy would be useless in 6 months. They had two choices. Option A, stop the war, leave China, and apologize. Option B, attack the Dutch East Indies, Indonesia, to steal their oil. But wait, if they attack Indonesia, the US Navy in the Philippines will stop them. So, they chose option C, the YOLO strategy. Narrator: Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, came up with a plan. He loved America, he studied at Harvard, so he knew exactly how dangerous the US was. We have to knock them out in one punch, destroy their Pacific fleet at Pearl Harbor. Before they can rebuild, we grab the oil and fortify. It was a gamble. A massive, desperate gamble. Sunday morning. Hawaii. Sailors were sleeping in. Hundreds of Japanese Zeros filled the sky. Tora, Tora, Tora. Tiger, Tiger, Tiger. It was a tactical masterpiece, but a strategic nightmare. They sank the battleships, but they missed the aircraft carriers, which were out at sea, and the oil tanks. Yamamoto allegedly said, "I fear all we have done is to awaken a sleeping giant and fill him with a terrible resolve." America didn't just get mad, they went industrial. They built ships faster than Japan could sink them. They built planes faster than Japan could train pilots. In 5 minutes, literally 5 minutes, Japan lost 4 aircraft carriers, the cream of their navy. From this point on, Japan was losing, but they refused to quit. The US strategy was island hopping. Skip the strong islands, take the weak ones, get closer to Tokyo. But the Japanese soldiers fought to the death. Surrender was dishonorable. On Saipan, on Iwo Jima, on Okinawa, the casualties were insane. By 1944, Japan was desperate. They brought back an old idea. Remember the Mongols? The Kamikaze, divine wind? Except this time, the wind was a 19-year-old kid in a plane strapped with bombs, crashing directly into US ships. It was terrifying, but it couldn't stop the inevitable. The US Air Force, led by Curtis LeMay, began firebombing Japanese cities. Tokyo was made of wood and paper. It burned like kindling. 100,000 people died in one night in Tokyo, more than the nukes. But Japan still wouldn't surrender. The generals wanted to fight until the last bamboo spear. America had a secret weapon, the Manhattan Project. They warned Japan to surrender or face prompt and utter destruction. Japan ignored it or mistranslated it. A single plane, the Enola Gay, flew over Hiroshima. One bomb. Little boy. The city was gone. 70,000 people vaporized instantly. Japan was in shock. But the War Council was still debating. They didn't believe the US had another one. Narrator: 3 days later. Nagasaki. Fat man. Finally, Emperor Hirohito stepped in. The war situation has developed not necessarily to Japan's advantage. Greatest understatement in history. On August 15, 1945, the emperor's voice was broadcast on the radio. Most Japanese had never heard his voice before. Japan surrendered. The empire was dead. The cities were ash. The economy was zero. Japan was occupied by foreign soldiers for the first time in history. Everyone thought Japan was finished. A third world country forever. But they were wrong. Because Japan was about to pull off the greatest economic magic trick the world has ever seen. And they were going to do it with transistors? Next time, how Japan bought the world. the invention of karaoke, and the rise of the salaryman. Enter Douglas MacArthur, the supreme commander for the Allied powers. Or as the Japanese called him, the Gaijin, foreign, shogun. America occupied Japan. This was weird. Usually, conquerors pillage and burn. America wrote a constitution? MacArthur had a checklist. 1. Women get to vote. Big win. 2. Land reform. Peasants get land. 3. Article 9. This is the big one. Article 9 basically said, Japan can never have an army or go to war again. You are grounded. No more swords. No more tanks. Go to your room and think about what you did. Fine. But if I can't build tanks, what should I build? If you can't conquer the world with guns, try conquering it with GDP. Then, luck struck. The Korean War started in 1950. The US needed supplies. Fast. And Japan was right there. Japan became America's factory. Trucks, uniforms, buckets. The US poured billions of dollars into Japan. It was the gift from the gods. But there was a problem. In the 1950s, made in Japan meant garbage. It was cheap, low-quality junk. Enter an American statistician named W. Edwards Deming. In America, nobody listened to him. But in Japan, they treated him like a prophet. He taught them quality control. The Japanese took this and created Kaizen, continuous improvement. We don't just build cars, we build them perfectly. Slowly, things changed. Honda made motorcycles that didn't leak oil. Sony made transistor radios you could put in your pocket. Toyota made cars that actually started in the winter. While American car companies were building gas-guzzling tanks, the 1973 oil crisis hit. Suddenly, everyone wanted a small, fuel-efficient Japanese car. Japan wasn't just copying anymore, they were winning. They built the bullet train. It was faster than anything in Europe. Japan was back, baby. And they started exporting culture too. Not anime yet, but Godzilla. A giant monster created by nuclear radiation destroying Tokyo? Sounds like therapy to me. Welcome to the 80s. The bubble era. Japan was filthy rich. The yen was strong. The banks were handing out loans like candy. Japanese businessmen were partying in Ginza, waving 10,000 yen bills just to get a taxi. They bought Columbia Pictures. They bought the Rockefeller Center. They bought Pebble Beach Golf Course. Americans were terrified. Cyberpunk was born. Blade Runner, Neuromancer. Everyone predicted the future would be Japanese. The Imperial Palace grounds in Tokyo were theoretically worth more than all the real estate in California combined. Japan had achieved what the samurai couldn't. They conquered the West. Not with katanas, but with Walkmans and VCRs. But gravity is a law for a reason. Narrator, in 1990, the bubble burst. Real estate prices crashed. The stock market tanked. Trillions of dollars of wealth evaporated overnight. It was called the lost decade. The economy stagnated. The salarymen weren't partying anymore. They were working 16 hours a day just to keep their jobs. The dream of buying the world was over. Japan had to look inward again. But in this dark, depressing time, something colorful began to grow in the cracks. A subculture of comics, video games, and animation that had been bubbling under the surface for decades. When reality sucks, people look for an escape. Narrator, and Japan was about to engineer the ultimate escape mechanism. A weapon so powerful it would make General Z kids across the globe wish they were Japanese high schoolers. Narrator, get your waifu pillows ready. Next up, the anime invasion. To understand anime, we have to go back a bit. Meet Osamu Tezuka, the god of manga. Narrator, post-war Japan was depressing. Tezuka wanted to bring joy. He loved American cartoons, specifically Disney. He noticed something. Disney characters had giant expressive eyes. Bambi. Mickey? I'm gonna steal that. He created Astro Boy. He gave his characters massive eyes to show emotion. It became the standard. So, yes, anime eyes are technically a remix of 1940 Seconds Disney. The Circle of Life. Fast forward to the 90s. The Japanese economy was in the toilet, the lost decade. But the culture factory was running at 110% capacity. While adults were worrying about debt, kids in America were getting brainwashed by this plumber. Nintendo saved the video game industry. Sony launched the PlayStation. And then, the bomb dropped. Not a nuclear one, a cultural one. Pokémon, it wasn't just a game. It was a religion. Then came Dragon Ball Z on Toonami, Sailor Moon, Naruto. For the first time, Western kids thought Japan was cool, not scary, not an economic threat, just cool. This brings us to a conspiracy theory. It's called gross national cool or soft power. Some historians argue that Japan's obsession with kawaii, cute, was a defense mechanism. After World War II, the world hated Japan. They were the villains. How do you make people stop hating you? You become harmless. You become adorable. You can't be mad at the country that gave you Pikachu. It worked. Japan rebranded itself from the Empire of the Rising Sun to the Land of the Rising Sun X. They realized that influencing the world's dreams is more powerful and profitable than conquering their land. So, did the samurai spirit die? Not really. It just changed forms. The samurai were obsessed with mastery, perfecting the sword, perfecting the ceremony. Modern Japan is still obsessed with mastery, but now, it's perfecting the pixels, perfecting the storylines, perfecting the toilet seats that play music. The discipline remains. The medium changed. Japan tried to conquer the world with swords. Failed. Japan tried to conquer the world with money. Failed. But in the end, they conquered the world with culture. And this time, we all surrendered willingly. So, the next time you watch anime, just remember, you're watching the result of 200 years of isolation, civil war, industrialization, nuclear devastation, and economic collapse. History is weird. If you want more oversimplified history that ruins your childhood, hit that subscribe button. Which country should we oversimplify next? The chaos of Vietnam? The madness of Russia? Let me know in the comments.